Last year, you could pick up a decent 32GB kit of DDR5 RAM under $100. Today, that same kit is sitting at $300, and that too even if you can find it in stock. If you look at PC Part Picker lately, the price graphs don't look like a market. They look like a mountain range. We will be calling it Rramageddon, but this isn't just inflation or a supply chain hiccup. Behind the scenes, the very way memory is manufactured has fundamentally shifted. While we were all looking at GPUs, a massive memory wall was being built by the world's largest tech giants. Today, we are going inside the silicon fabs to see why RAM prices suddenly exploded, why the big three manufacturers have abandoned the consumer market, and why the old just wait for the crash advice might actually be dangerous this time. Hey everyone, welcome back to the South Arrow Network. This is Tech Talks with Hasnan. If you're building a PC in 2026, you've probably noticed a disturbing trend. CPUs are getting faster. GPUs are slowly becoming available, but RAM is now like the new gold. In just the last 3 months, we've seen prices spike over 170% on standard DDR5 kits. Even in legacy DDR4, the stuff that was supposed to be dirt cheap by now is surging in price like crazy. HP recently reported that RAM now accounts for 35% of the total cost of building a PC. That's up from 15% just over a year ago. So why is all this happening? To understand, we have to talk about the AI tax you didn't know you were paying. We have to talk about HBM, the high bandwidth memory that is currently cannibalizing every silicon wafer on the planet. First, let's talk about the memory wall. For a long time, the bottleneck in AI was computing power, how fast a chip could think. But in 2026, we hit the memory wall. AI models are now so large that they can't fit inside a traditional chip. They need massive amount of high bandwidth memory, or HBM3E, and here's the problem that it produces for you and me. HBM isn't a different type of silicon. It's just standard DRAM dies stacked like a skyscraper. One single NVIDIA B300 rack uses roughly 20 terabytes of HBM. To build that, manufacturers like Samsung and SK Hynix have to take thousands of silicon wafers that could have become your 16GB desktop memory, but instead they stack them into data centers. This is the wafer cannibalization factor. HBM production is incredibly inefficient. It takes roughly 3 times the wafer capacity to produce 1 GB of HBM compared to 1 GB of standard DDR5 RAM. Because the profit margins on AI memory are nearly 10 times higher than consumer RAM, the big three, also known as Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron, have made a cold hard business decision. They are walking away from consumers like you and me. But why would they do that? Why can't they cater both of us? For that, we have to understand how RAM is made and why we can't just make more. Whenever prices go up, people ask, why don't they just build more factories and then build more products? To answer that, we need to take a technical deep dive into the life of a memory fab. Building a modern DRAM fabrication plant, a fab, is one of the most complex human endeavors on earth. A single top-tier fab in 2026 cost upwards of $20 billion US. On top of that, it takes about 3 to 5 years to go from breaking ground to the first wafer. RAM has now become a commodity with razor-thin margins. If a manufacturer builds a fab and the market crashes by the time it opens, they would literally lose billions of dollars. Right now, we are in a structural shortage. Micron has announced massive expansion in parts of US, but that silicon won't hit the market until late 2027 or even 2028. Until then, the world is fighting over a fixed number of wafers. And in that fight, Microsoft and Google have bigger wallets than you do. Now, let's talk about why DDR4 is rising. I mean, isn't that the legacy RAM that used to be what we would have in our computers? I wouldn't blame you for thinking that when DDR5 becomes the standard, DDR4 would literally become cheap. But in 2026, the opposite is happening. This is what we call the legacy scarcity phase. Most manufacturers have officially stopped the production of their DDR4 lines to to make room for more HBM and DDR5. This means that DDR4 RAMs are now not being produced anymore and they are an end-of-line product. But the world still runs on DDR4. Millions of office PC in the world, industrial system, and older gaming rigs still need that. So, with supply dropping to near zero and demand remaining steady, DDR4 has actually seen higher percentage price increases than DDR5 in some regions. We are seeing a 1% price increase per day on some 32GB DDR4 kits. If you're holding on to an AM4 system or an older 12th gen build, your cheap upgrade window just slammed shut. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Is this price fixing? The DRAM market is essentially a triopoly. Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron control over 95% of the global supply. Historically, these three have engaged in a boom and bust cycle. They overproduce, resulting in prices to crash, then they lose money, and they instantly cut production, resulting in prices to skyrocket again. But in 2026, this is different. This time, they are practicing disciplined supply. Internal leak memos suggest that manufacturers are intentionally keeping inventory lean to avoid the oversupply disaster of 2023. They have learned that they make more money selling less RAM at higher prices. When you combine disciplined supply with insane AI demand, you get a perfect storm where the consumer has zero leverage. So the question that everyone is asking right now is that, should I wait? Will the prices drop in the future? In previous years, the answer was in fact always a yes. RAM prices usually and eventually always crash. But here is the mindset shift for 2026. The cycle has broken. Usually, a price spike is followed by a massive capacity increase. But because AI demand is structural, meaning it's not a fad, it's a fundamental change in how the world computes, that demand isn't going away. In fact, it's going to get higher. Analysts at TrendForce and Counterpoint are now predicting that prices will remain elevated through at least Q4 of 2027. We might see micro dips during holiday sales, but the baseline MSRP of RAM stick has moved permanently higher. Even if we were to assume what could possibly trigger a crash, the only thing that will crash RAM prices in 2026 is an AI cooling. If big tech companies decide that AI isn't ROI positive and they stop building data centers, the market will be flooded with excess DRAM. Until that bubble pops, you are competing with industry tech giants for silicon. But there is one good news that I have for you in this whole scenario: rise of Chinese RAM. There is one wildcard in the market: CXMT, Changshin Memory Technologies. China has been pouring billions into their own domestic RAM production to bypass Western shortages. In early 2026, we started seeing a white label Chinese RAM kit appearing on marketplaces like AliExpress or Amazon for 40% less than Corsair or G-Skill. However, there's a catch. These kits often use downbinned or recovered silicon. We've seen reports of fake DDR5, which is actually just highly overclocked DDR4 modules with a modified SPD chip. While these Chinese brands might eventually save the budget market, but right now they are a buyer beware situation. So what's the move here? If you need a PC today, the era of budgeting for RAM is over. You have to treat RAM like you treat a GPU or a CPU, which is a major capital expense. Do not skimp right now. If you're buying DDR5, go for 32GB today. Buying 16GB and hoping to upgrade to later might cost you double in the next 6 months or so. Monitor the servers. Keep an eye on the data center market. When the big guys stop buying, that's your signal to strike. We have to stop thinking of RAM as a cheap commodity. In the AI era, RAM is the real estate where intelligence lives. And just like real estate, they aren't making any more of it quickly. The memory market has unfortunately moved on to a bigger commercial customer, and we are the ones stuck paying the price for it. And that's it for today's video. Let me know in the comments down below if you are waiting for a price crash or you've already bitten the bullet on an expensive RAM kit. You can also let me know your horror stories of RAM pricing in the comments or any regrets that you might have. I can currently see here that RAM prices for a 64GB kit are even more than an entire PS5. It's quietly getting wild out there. If you want a guide on which budget brands are actually safe to buy in 2026, let me know and I will make a video on that next. If you like this content, make sure to press the subscribe button and also press that bell icon so you get notified for more tech talks at South Terra Network. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. I will see you in the next one.